That's the short term. In the long run, we are in a world of hurt. And it's because we have this regressive tax system that prevents us from having robust public services and public goods. And we can't fund public services with a pre-World War II tax structure, which is what we have now. So we need a little more pragmatic approach to long-term reform. And here are some of the premises. I've been working with a guy named Bill Gates Sr. You probably heard of him. And remember, he had a tax commission that Governor Locke asked him to chair about 6 years ago, and they came out with a report. And the news in the report was it included income tax, and it lasted for about a week, and then it sort of went away. Right? Went away. So I had the privilege of working with Bill and a guy named Aubrey Davis and my colleague at EOI, Marilyn Watkins, to have a series, sort of an iterative series of meetings with opinion makers, legislators around the state over the last 5 years. And Bill and Aubrey and Marilyn and I decided in March of last year now that if we were going to get serious, we should get serious, and if we wanted to look at doing an initiative for progressive income tax in 2010, we should start working on it then. So we did. So here are the premises that we work from. We have to have a more modern tax structure to sustain the quality public structures, such as K-12 education, needed for a prosperous economy. We also know that in the current political climate, the legislature and the governor will not lead. So tomorrow, don't talk to them about an income tax. Talk to them about these tax exemptions and tax loopholes that they'll actually do something about. And so because of that, an initiative really is the only way to significant long-term tax reform. And again, I mentioned the Oregon experience, and that sort of provides seeds for hope, is that they won that initiative for increasing their income tax on high incomes 2 weeks ago. Here are the elements of the proposed reform that we've developed. One is a progressive high income tax. So this would be on households that make over $400,000 in income. We would reduce the property tax across the board. So we reduce the state portion of the property tax by 20% across the board. We would actually eliminate the business and occupation tax for 85% of businesses. These are the smaller businesses. And just, you probably know this, but just as our tax structure now is highly regressive, with low-income people paying a lot more than high-income people, our business tax is the same way. So small businesses pay twice as much proportionally than large corporations. I see someone there shaking their head, so I must be right about that. So, okay, so we would eliminate the B&O tax for these businesses. And we'd still gain new net revenues of $1 billion per year, and that will grow over time. And we're going to add accountability and control measures. So here's what it looks like. Here's a prototype. It'd be a 5% tax on incomes of more than $400,000 for households. It would jump to 9% when you have an income of more than $1 million. We reduce the state portion of the property tax by 20%. That would cost the state about $357 million. Increase the B&O credit, and there's our net annual revenue gain. To give you an idea, what does this mean in different towns in terms of property tax savings? In Seattle, it'd be $178. In Mercer Island, it'd be $369. In Skycoma, it'd be $61. So everyone is getting a across-the-board cut in their property tax. And the thing about that is that what this measure will do is will decrease taxes for 95% of property owners in the state of Washington. It will mean that 88% of businesses don't pay the business and occupations tax. And it will have a tax on the top 3% of household incomes in the state of Washington. Those who up until this time have not been paying their proportionate share for paying for public services and goods. And those, by the way, who have benefited the most from the last 30 years of economic growth. And I want to leave you with something. You know, we all sort of are in this mood that we're in a terrible situation in terms of revenue and the recession. But the fact is that if you look over the last 30 years, we've had tremendous growth in state gross domestic product and in product. 13,000 families in Washington, in the United States. Another, if you just look at the top 1%, 55% of that growth in gross domestic product has gone to the top 1% of families in our country. So something has gone awry, where we've had this tremendous growth in productivity, in gross domestic product, but it hasn't been translated in terms of increasing the quality of life or the living standards of middle-class families. And it certainly has gotten worse over the last 15 years when you think about these families, and you're probably you're some of these families who are paying much more for your share of health care. You may have, you're not having a defined benefit pension, so you may have a defined contribution pension that was a 401k and now may be a 201k or a 301k. If your children or grandchildren have children who are paying for childcare because they're working, that childcare has gone up. So if you have an infant, your childcare is going to be $900 to $1,000 a month. And so basically what you have this situation is that middle-class economic security is being undermined. So what we need is to figure out a way that we can bring in more public revenues to our state so we can make sure we have a good foundation for K-12 education and higher education and early learning. And also to figure out a way to make sure in the end that the benefits of the growth in gross domestic product are distributed much more evenly and justly than they have been in the last 30 years. And part of that impulse is for this income tax initiative. This is the time to do it. It's going to take all of us, and if we don't do it now, when will we? Thank you.